A new Final Fantasy game is a big event, specifically to me, someone who loves Final Fantasy. Can you believe I'm still single? But with every new Final Fantasy game comes new experiences, new stories, and more importantly, new levels of nerd rage about what is a Final Fantasy game. Oh god, I am recording this on what is, as always, the hottest day of a heatwave, because that seems to always be when I record, and it's like filming in Ifrit's armpit, so expect to just slowly watch me progressively melt through the course of this video, because oh god, it's warm! Final Fantasy XVI is here, and for the first time ever, this is a game for adults. Rated 18. No, this isn't just Barrett somehow slipping in a surprising number of swear words for a game that is otherwise rated 11. No, this is a grown-up experience for big burly boys. Oh god, there's so much blood and violence. Final Fantasy XVI does not wait around before throwing you in the deep end of medieval destruction, reveling in its complete disregard for the sanctity of human life. People swear, there's blood and violence and people don't do goo all the time, and there's nudity. Sexy, sexy nudity.
Get dressed. Pretty as you are, you're not my type.
Our story follows Clive, a gruff, grunting dreamboat who at one point was a doe-eyed youth, sworn to protect his nice, younger brother, Joshua.
It isn't a waste. My shields look after me. Why shouldn't I?
Oh, Joshua, you're such a lovely boy. It would be a shame if something tragic were to happen to you. Growing up in the dukedom of Rosaria is tough though when you're not the chosen child. Especially more so when you have a mother who is as rude as Clive's.
We should join them.
Did he just give me a sword to kill my own mother? One thing leads to another and our sweet younger brother has a bad time. Which naturally means that the older brother also has a bit of a bad time. Yes, with his entire family dead, Clive is little more than a slave trapped in the throes of a war featuring large, incomprehensibly devastating, magical, mythical beings who bring destruction wherever they go. This war of dominance and for land free from a sort of unending blight envelops the world, and this is where we find Clive once more, trapped in the confines of this conflict with nary but a spark of hope left in his dull eyes. And then Sid turns up.
This way.
A gruff and charming man, casual as you like, walks in off the street and gives Clive a whole new reason to live. Revenge.
Murderer. I'll kill you! I'll kill you!
Well, specifically, he gives Clive the freedom to carry out the only thing that woke Clive up in the morning. His hunger for revenge.
I'll show him the mercy he showed my brother, and cut out the tongue of any man who tries to talk me out of it.
All right. Forest dark enough as it is.
It is safe to say that the story and setting of Final Fantasy XVI has taken a lot of influence from the likes of Game of Thrones. Ah, look! A more grounded and gritty world where warring armies and the politics around them take the centre stage. Also, everyone keeps swearing.
You cock.
Bloody show off.
But it isn't all doom and gloom, and Clive just being a big old sourpuss hell-bent on revenge. The general strange humour one might come to expect from the Final Fantasy series persists and is routinely supported by a number of well-realised and fun characters. Plus, there's an almost palpable level of sexual tension between Clive and Jill at nearly every moment of the story.
We should get some rest.
Right.
Just kiss already. But you're not just simply watching these two lovebirds allow for their own inherent gravitational pulls to slowly drag them together on the off chance that their lips might touch. No, you've also got to hit things with your big sword. In what is probably the most contentious part of Final Fantasy XVI, it has combat. But this isn't your standard affair of patiently waiting for your turn to enact violence on whatever awaits the feel of your blade. Although, with how heavily nondescript British this game is, if the combat were simply just everyone waiting in a queue and occasionally loudly tutting when everyone had the audacity to provide them with damage, well, that would probably be very thematic. Typical. This is an action game, and not something simple like in Final Fantasy XV, where those sweet, precious boys hit things with their weapons.
You guys are the best.
Oh god, it gets me every time. No, Final Fantasy XVI crashes through your window and starts styling all over your interior design as it surfs around the room, creating a medley of murder. The Devil May Cry reference is actually very clever here because, you see, the combat design was done by Ryota Suzuki, who brought you the high-octane action of Devil May Cry 5. The spectacle fighter combat here sees you wailing away on a variety of foes, dashing from target to target in a string of fast-paced mayhem, knocking your enemies to ribbons and trying to slowly wear down your larger enemies, staggering them and then unloading everything your hunky body can muster for massive damage. And it works! As you release your string of attacks, fun little messages pop up on the side of the screen, letting you know all the cool things you're doing, falling just shy of giving you that elusive triple S rank, a la Devil May Cry. And having the instant access to the high mobility of the Phoenix Dash keeps the combat fluid and stops it from immediately becoming a slow and plodding mess. Although, that said, I do feel like maybe things are just a little too simple, as I've not once been defeated, let alone really needed to use any of the potions to heal.
I can't go on.
This all begins to feel a little simple, maybe repetitive. And, well, is it even Final Fantasy? The Dominants are a key part of this story, and Clive begins his adventure surrounded by a number of these individuals, capable of calling forth the powers of godlike beings that can destroy everything. But Clive is but a simple single man. No matter how burly he may be, there's no way he'll possibly be able to take on these giant, monstrous creatures. How will he ever gain the power to seek his sweet, sweet revenge on that mysterious, extra fire dominant that so ruined his life? Yes, in news that is a shock to only Clive, He is the mysterious extra dominant of fire, making this tale of vengeance a lot harder to achieve.
I'm a monster! And I deserve to die! So end it! End it now!
But with great fire comes great drama. Specifically, giant kaiju monster fights. The thick emotional vein that runs through this game is even stronger during these heated moments of giant-on-giant violence. Sure, it may not look it while you're stomping around and punching a big bird lady in the face, but this is actually peak emotional input. Whether it be the culmination of a long-held grudge or a desperate fight against fate, these story beats and big fights feel consistently impactful.
You'll get no pity from me, Kuka. No pity. And no mercy. Now die!
Even more so through the frantic button mashing of well-done quick-time events. I know, QuickTime events, that doesn't sound very Final Fantasy now, does it? But with the level of melodrama and energy involved, they slink in smoothly as your butt slowly slides to the edge of your seat and it takes root in the drama. All of this is held together masterfully by the incredible voice performances, from Sid's bucket of gravel of a voice, just releasing quip after quip.
You two behave now.
Or Clive swinging wildly between angry, hate-filled screams of terror to pitiful, emotional screams of sadness.
Why the hell am I still breathing?
And then there's Gav. Gav!
You could have just said I.
Despite trying to present a story that's grounded in gritty, medieval, po-faced serious business, it will lurch strongly into the levels of melodrama reserved almost exclusively for an RPG of this ilk.
I'm sorry. I failed you.
Or, I guess, just the plain silly.
I found him with his nose buried in my nuts.
It's a story about freedom, about revenge, and probably about killing God, because, I mean, that is how every story ends. When the game actually wants to tell you the story, each segment feels strong and intense.
Please.
Lengthy dungeon elements that put you up against a variety of bastards through interesting caves, cities, and dungeons, with world building that makes you eager for the next, all acting as delicious vehicles for the main cast.
Why aren't you dead?
Or at least, when the game actually wants to show this to you. During your adventure, the combat thankfully expands and develops with the inclusion of extra iconic, by which I mean the giant godlike monsters, abilities, which you slowly master and develop and build into your repertoire to create something incredible. Early on, you'll begin to feel the combat grow stale, tired, and tedious, as you're just running around with a handful of specific Phoenix-based powers.
It's over.
But before too long, you'll be juggling a number of elemental abilities, each bringing their own unique flavor of style. Garuda's whipping and flipping is great for including verticality to your combat, ripping enemies from the sky to your hands. Titan focuses on blocking and countering with tight and precise timing, and it all feels nail-biting. The spectacle jumps out from the screen in scenes of exceptional beauty as your understanding of what works well together grows and grows, and you steadily knock together wild combos that feel alive.
Me.
The combat feels great. The speed is always fast-paced as you're darting from enemy to enemy or ducking around the feet of some giant beast. And also, there's a mechanic which is about like artfully weaving in, pressing the magic button to blast a spell after each and every one of your attacks, meaning that your hands dance over the controller to a very specific rhythm of pressing more buttons. Yes, I am just saying that pushing buttons feels good, and the more buttons pressed, the gooder it feels. But this frenetic energy gets you pumped up. It makes fighting a wave of chumps or bosses alike just feel like something you desperately want to dive into and just throw yourself around in. And the bosses. Oh, the bosses. While the boss fights are riddled with cinematics, turning them into slightly more scripted affairs of smashing someone around for them to only release another, stronger form. The sustained energy that runs through all of this pulls you further forwards. There's a level of near silliness involved as you run up the arms of a giant mountain of an enemy. Swatting its hands out of the way in your pursuit of vengeance. Or maybe you're getting so involved in a fight, so spectacular, that you don't even know if you're on the face of the planet anymore. Or you're just swerving out of the way of a sudden series of deadly walls that would make Anton Dubek jealous. Bring on the wall! This combat is so focused on hitting the ground running and maintaining that sprint, nearly refusing to give you the chance to breathe before you're once more fighting a group of little creatures. You're given so many opportunities to experiment and change your plays and slowly master this ball of incredible design. Although, is it even Final Fantasy? Also, and this is a big issue, all of that energy and character strength is only really meaningful if it's regularly maintained throughout the game. Oh no! Oh god, Final Fantasy XVI has the worst pacing issues. So there are a lot of cutscenes, lots of lengthy cutscenes, and to be honest, I can see how some people might just tap out, mentally switch off during these long scenes. But the ones that are story quests are incredible. They mostly focus on the actual story of the game, whatever that may be, and they allow for the wonderful performances of the cast, all the characters, to shine forward with these engaging, thrilling, emotional scenes. But then there are long bits. Long bits of utter gumph. The story isn't all just running around screaming and shouting and crying. There will be moments of walking through the open air and casually strolling through a settlement and interacting with the world around you. And also complete about 5 million tedious quests. These quests range from go over to somewhere to kill some monsters and come back, or go over to somewhere, pick up some stuff, and then come back, or go over to somewhere, kill some monsters, pick up some stuff, and then come back.
Hopefully this will put Rodriguez's mind at ease.
Yes, this is a very reductive way of looking at basically every bit of game design ever, but you really begin to feel it as you work your way through Final Fantasy XVI. To the point that I may as well be running around a puddle trying to collect frogs all over again, and we all hated that. I'm the Crown Prince for crying out loud. This isn't exactly walking tall, friends.
Walk tall.
Frogs. After every story beat, you'll open the map and find it covered with little green marks, eager for you to stop whatever you're doing, whatever great, epic moment of story that just happened, and, I don't know, go help Martha out at the inn? Martha, I'm literally trying to kill God. Can this wait?
His name is Bernard.
What starts out as a little, haha, I'll do these odd bits and pieces, rapidly turns into an all-consuming time sink with no escape. The quests provide a number of useful rewards that either allow you to get better equipment, upgrade items, and just get a whole host of other bits and pieces. And it's that initial drip feed of quests and items that really lulls you into a false sense of security. So then you think like, yeah, I can probably complete all of these. So by the time you get later into that game, well, you're in too deep and you're trying to keep up above in your head. Instead, you're falling under. Ah, Christ, there's more of them. This is where things begin to just drag. It's an endless wall of talking heads tediously flapping their lips at you as a sea of hot air washes over you and you slowly yearn for the end. Only every step towards that end just gives you more. More! One of the worst parts is that these aren't even that interesting. Maybe all these quests would be a great chance to explore your relationship with the big named people like Jill or Gav or like anyone of interest. Or maybe they're all about improving your home base, increasing the various tools and foundations of this location you return to after each mission. No! There are a number of side characters and like side characters, and maybe even like side characters, and the majority of these quests all take place on the last group.
I found him with his nose buried in my nuts.
Waves of characters you don't care about, slowly working their way through a tediously dull story to eventually come to an emotional payoff that would be a lot more impactful if I cared. But that's fine, you don't have to do these side missions, right? Uh-oh, the main story is also littered with these awful, tedious quests. Just having to slowly walk around to pick up lumps of sand and then head home and nothing else is happening. Or walking around a market and buying food for a picnic with Jill and, my God, just kiss each other.
Thank you. It was nice just being with you.
None of this is about the main cast. This is just busy work. An actual good quest that expanded on the characters and made me actually cry a little bit was relegated to a side adventure for this. Why? Why are you doing this, Square Enix? What are you doing?
I found him with his nose buried in my nuts.
These quests drain the life out of you like some kind of unsexy succubus. But to make it even worse, not only do they not actually focus on your main core cast and focus on expanding them, instead deciding to handle a load of characters you don't care about, they're also just boring. Like really, really boring, simple quests. And like, just get rid of them. Remove them from the game. Oh, but if you take out all the quests, then there's not a lot of game actually happening. There already isn't. It's just a bunch of cookie-cutter quests over and over and over again, just sapping you of any enjoyment that you might have experienced. Is it even Final Fantasy? All of this is to say that whatever good faith in the game is built up by its melodramatic story, its over-the-top action, is routinely shattered by frustrating quests. And then, to make matters worse, is just how the game explores its themes. Final Fantasy XVI tries to explore the idea of racism, specifically the magical branded, who are found at birth, physically marked, and then thrown into shackled slavery as subhuman tools to produce water and other useful resources. It routinely goes out of its way to show you how badly they're looked upon in society, as Clive goes around shocked Pikachu face at the existence of racism, despite also having spent all of his adult life as a slave, and also his entire life in a world of slavery. There are moments where the side quests eagerly try to continue to show this. There are haunting quests where you're exposed to the mentality of entitled nobles and how they interact with the world.
Is that all she was to you? A plaything? Do you really not care that she's dead?
Dad said bears don't have parents.
Ceaseless cruelty rolls out from these characters. There are also moments, however, where children solve racism after an entire town turns on a character for secretly being branded the entire time.
You know there's nothing he wouldn't do for this town. Who was it who made that cleaver you use every day, Conrad?
Genuinely, they tell the adults that they're being mean, and then everyone stops literally stoning a man to death and learn the error of their ways. And then I think, make him mayor or something?
So, if you would still like to be considered for the position of mayor, you have our backing.
The point is that the game fumbles and stumbles repeatedly around these ideas and around a topic that, much like everything else in Final Fantasy XVI, it doesn't actually want to give you the time to think about. It is a topic that is briefly touched upon very early on in the game, and then completely, rapidly forgotten. Then it's brought back a little bit in the middle here and there, ultimately to be sidelined for the greater evil, killing God. Sure, you could argue that these two are technically kind of related in the same thing, because it's to do with freedom and fighting against a higher power that has constrained you against your freedom and will to live. But also, this fumble doesn't simply stop at how it has handled racism and sort of the concept of a minority class of being within their story. It also extends to how it handles women. There are a handful of female characters that have names that are relevant to the story, namely Jill, Benedicta, and Clive's mum. At first, these characters are interesting and intense. They continue to be incredible.
No need for that. Kill him.
But Benedicta is lost to the vice grip of death far too early, and then forgotten about. And while Clive's mum might be a major secret villain of grand schemes, she dies off screen and is rapidly forgotten about. And then there's Jill. Sweet, sweet Jill. She is great. She's angry, she's fighty, hungry for revenge.
You're right. I am a monster. And my soul is stained black. Now it is you who shall bow to me!
But also, the notable parts of her story are being captured to then be freed, and then to not really turn up for a while, getting captured again, and then freed, and then not turning up for a bit, then getting captured a third time to be rescued.
You came!
And then being relegated to the sidelines forever. I'm trying to talk about these things as vaguely loosely as possible to avoid any notable spoilers. But at the same time, they're really bad. Like, I really want to like Jill as a character. I do really like Jill as a character. She's genuinely quite fun. She's quite feisty.
When I fought, hundreds died. There were so many bodies. So many lives cut short in their prime.
She has a very unique attitude for a lot of Final Fantasy female characters, and the way that she's also used to explore Clive's more emotional side through their budding romance. It's really good. She provides a unique outlook on the world itself due to her backstory and the environment she was built up in, being so different to everyone else's. There's so much interesting stuff at play here. But again, Final Fantasy XVI is so eager to not let you see this, not let you actually experience any of these good characters, because, oh no, we've got to go help some old lady rummage through the bins because she dropped some beans in there or something. While I'm at it, let's continue this incredibly long frustration chain by talking about the world building, or more importantly, the lack thereof. A fun feature that's included in the game is that at any point you can bring up a fun little glossary of sorts that will have a bit of extra information on specific key hot topics, proper nouns that have been mentioned in passing conversation. But with this feature comes great tragedy. No longer is the world explored through dialogue or terrible quests, and instead this menu. But the few times you might actually go like, well, I don't really understand what's happening with this weird thing, you'll go in and look into it and, instead the game responds like, no, this is a concept that we've left purposefully obscure for the purpose of the story. You might find out about this later. And you're like, oh, I'm really confused, but okay, because everyone seems to know about it, but apart from me. And then later, I don't know, you might just be looking up a random character or something, and in that little background bit, it has their entire reason for doing anything in the game. And it's just hidden away. It's not ever experienced in the game. It's not brought up naturally. Instead, it's just hidden away by this awful old man. Ho 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 ho! They really like to nibble on my nuts. This near emotional void between you and the world extends to your surroundings. You'll come across a number of settlements or quest hubs, and it is nice that they're there. But they're also lightly soulless, lost in their own medieval theming. There is no sense of culture or setting for each settlement, and instead, the world blurs behind the beige filter of side quests. Then there are the big capital cities, and these incredible locations are lost to the restricted story quests, so you never get to explore these main hubs of culture for each country. So the world itself is never really expanded upon beyond these small, tiny settlements. Then, the biggest issue in how this world is actually presented. The side quests. Yes, I know I've been harping on about this a bit too much at this point, but this is specifically how they're actually given to you. Clive is a branded, or fugitive, or both, and whenever you enter a brand new town, every NPC talks to you fine and dandy. They'll dispense quests to you like there's no tomorrow, and then eventually you get a fun little badge, which just unlocks more side quests.
Take this. You will find it has the uncanny power to loosen tongues.
The idea here is that these badges prove you're a trusted individual and you've unlocked a secret network of informants and trust. But instead, it's a MacGuffin that just activates more quests. These aren't NPCs that you would have interacted with at some point and then were told to go away.
I cannot help but notice you bear the moon and star.
No, these people only become interactable once the scout badge is received. There could have been something interesting used here about how the world views Clive as a branded.
I don't bloody believe it. The bastard's wearing the moon and stars.
You could have been given a load of quests immediately upon entering a town, and some can only be progressed once you've gained the trust of certain individuals. So your side quests all relate to one another, and some can only be progressed by getting to a certain point in another one to basically, make all of this worthwhile, to make it feel like your reputation is actually being boosted, so you're becoming more trusted within these communities and these settlements, creating a unique culture around the settlement and community itself. But instead, every single quest exists in its own personal void, completely separate from the world and every single quest around it. The pretense of these badges is never implemented well, and it's all just a bit. You begin to dread any moment when a character is talking to you and they're like, ho ho, I begin to trust you now, here, have this nice sticker, because it just means that you're going to turn around and be presented with a wall of new green notifications and side quests to do. And is this even Final Fantasy? Okay, I'm gonna stop complaining about the side quests. Now we have a much more important question to answer. Yes, obviously you fool, it says so right here on the box. But if we were to take a further look at sort of what makes a Final Fantasy game, it's got all those sorts of classics of a character named Sid, Moogles, big crystals, a sort of misunderstanding of aeronautics. All of these iconic and repeated concepts that appear over and over in Final Fantasy games are all here. And yet, people keep saying that it's not Final Fantasy. One of the biggest issues people have with Final Fantasy XVI is the lack of turn-based combat. Previously, a staple of the series. But it isn't a defining characteristic of the series. The last game to have proper turn-based combat was Final Fantasy X, which is now old enough to drink alcohol in America. The combat of Final Fantasy has been shifting and changing constantly, since its inception even, and this newly action-orientated entry is just the latest in that continued evolution. Also, it's great! I've seen people complain about the lack of variety in builds, probably pulling from the adaptability of materia in Final Fantasy VII, the junctioning madness of 8, or the really interesting paradigm system of 13. Yet, all of that exists here in 16. In fact, more so than the likes of 9 or 10. You can swap abilities around and these all change massively how you'll play, shifting between massive area of effect moves to wipe out large groups, or discovering a weird combo that activates the effect of a skill repeatedly. This is just really, really interesting and highly adaptable. There is such a level of potential skill involved in mastering all these different abilities and how they interact with one another that just constantly lets you experiment. It keeps things fresh. It keeps things fancy-free. It keeps you going through the grind. People have this preconception that Final Fantasy games are notorious for grinding, that you have to grind lots and lots to progress through the game, and that the lack thereof grinding within Final Fantasy XVI means that it's not a Final Fantasy game. So let's take a look at that. Every previous Final Fantasy game has not required grinding to progress. If you run straight at the objective, you will realistically be leveled and equipped enough to take on whatever ails you. I think what most people remember when they think of grinding in RPGs is that you were an actual child at the time who didn't understand that just hitting attack was probably bad. So you had to work hard to make that attack even stronger. Or perhaps it's the grinding involved in getting 100% completion, getting those obscure mega weapons and full stats. But have I got some sweet news for you? This game has so much grinding. It's the side quests again, okay? They are grinding embodied. They're just bad. But what about crafting? Yes, it has crafting.
No scratches, right?
Do you know what didn't really have crafting in any meaningful way? Final Fantasy, but it does now. Shut up. Oh, but then there's the linearity of the game. Let's be real here. Final Fantasy is a linear series. Just because it has a world map, this open world map, doesn't mean it isn't linear. You step out onto that spinning world map, and sure, you can go wherever you want within this limited space. But within this limited space, you can only go to Nibelheim. Final Fantasy X has numerous areas that are literally just a straight road, and Final Fantasy XVI has many lightly open areas that are filled with all sorts of bits and pieces. The least linear of the games is Final Fantasy XV, and that's the weakest part of the entire experience. But what about secrets? The aforementioned mega weapons and ultimate stats and unlocks? Well, they're not as secret as others, given they're all indicated by the side quests or bounties, but there are extra bosses and all sorts to fight. It's all there, all of it. It is Final Fantasy. At the end of the day, no matter how much people complain about the combat or any other mild annoyance or slight change in something, it still invokes like the same melodrama, the same systems, the same general concepts at the heart of that franchise. And to be honest, I kind of liked it. When Final Fantasy XVI actually got around to presenting me with the game and not just this slew of side quests, it was great. It was an enthralling story that kept me engaged, with combat that was gripping, and to use youth parlance, kind of hype. This is all perfectly maintained as well by the excellent combat that is high-paced and lightly frantic. Your hands are shaking, your heart is pounding, but you're still pushing on and you're still fighting for freedom the entire time. There was a moment where, as the conclusion was playing out, I suddenly realized I didn't have that level of connection with them. I didn't have this emotional attachment to the cast of characters that were experiencing this moment, especially not in the same way of like previous Final Fantasy games like Final Fantasy 15.
You guys are the best.
God damn. But then a couple of scenes played out and my heart suddenly twisted in my chest and just left me with nothing but emotional pain as these characters finally crystallized in my brain and I shared their pain and their experiences. If Final Fantasy XVI hadn't completely screwed up its side quests by refusing to really explore or develop any of its meaningful side characters, explore anything of note, and instead wear you down with this repeated, endless, tedious, boring experience, then this game could have been incredible, like astronomically good. But while I enjoyed playing the main chunks of Final Fantasy XVI, those main story beats were wonderful, so much of it is slightly ruined by that brown smear of over-bloated, over-numerous side quests and side activities that just add nothing beyond a sour taste in my mouth that left me slightly disappointed at times. And I've already gone back and re-watched the ending, mostly just to relive those brief moments of emotional investment and just to feel something and be reminded of what this game could be. Hello, thank you for watching this video. It is incredibly warm right now, like honestly, so warm. I am in a new flat that is really warm, not very well ventilated, and it's like a gosh darn heat wave. So this is great. This is why I haven't uploaded in ages, because I've been moving. I've just been putting this off. I was meant to have filmed this 2 days ago when it wasn't that warm, but I'm like, oh, it's a bit warm. I don't really want to do it. I'll do it on the Saturday. It is as hot as it could possibly be. This is the hottest day out of all the days. I am a fool. Oh God. Anyway, if you like or have thoughts about Final Fantasy 16, let me know. Honestly, I'm really intrigued by this game because it sounds like I hate it. I realise half of this video is me talking about how much I utterly despise this game, but I don't. I quite enjoyed it, but I don't know if that's just me desperately clinging on to Final Fantasy as a concept. Maybe. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. If you liked the video, feel free to leave a like, also maybe a comment about that, all these sorts of things. Otherwise, you can check a video here, which is about Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. It's a really good video, I think. I think it's one of my best videos in a while. Really fun, really good, well structured as well. Ooh, Otherwise, down here is another video, possibly about God of War, and if not, some kind of indie game or some form. It's been a while, so I'm not 100% certain as to what I've done recently, but check that out as well. Otherwise, you can click on my face where there is a face orb, which allows you to subscribe, and I'm gonna go melt and film everything else because it's a long day. I'm so warm. Thank you and goodbye.